Last week in Michigan politics, it's your voice, your vote, as another visit to West Michigan highlights the area's key position in this year's midterms, and as a familiar face for many in the region aims to take his ideas to Lansing. Plus, protecting Michigan's historic raceways, the latest on the effort in Lansing and why some feel it's needed. And what is the state of our state's second largest city? What its mayor had to say this week as part of his annual address. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. We begin with the ongoing partial government shutdown on Capitol Hill. As of Friday, the U.S. Senate passed a bill late this week to fund the Department of Homeland Security, except for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and parts of Customs and Border Protection. House Republican leadership later rejected the proposal. The impasse stems from concerns over the tactics of ICE and CBP in immigration enforcement. And on that issue this week, the state of Michigan and the city of Romulus announced they are suing to block a proposed ICE detention center from opening in a converted warehouse. Attorney General Dana Nessel and the Romulus mayor announced that lawsuit Tuesday, claiming the Department of Homeland Security skipped crucial permitting and environmental reviews. The mayor says the location, less than a mile from schools and residential neighborhoods, is a worst-case scenario for the community.
Any type of detention center must be vetted through all the required permitting channels. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a chance to grow and improve the quality of life for our residents, unburdened by outside interference.
The lawsuit also points to infrastructure concerns, saying the warehouse sits in a floodplain and lacks the sewer capacity to house 500 detainees. ICE reportedly purchased the site in February without notifying local officials. A congresswoman from the state's east side is calling for new federal oversight of immigration enforcement. Representative Haley Stevens' bill follows deadly incidents involving federal agents. 13 on Your Side's Aaron Sullivan spoke with Stevens and has more.
Stevens introduced the Hold ICE Accountable Act, which would create an independent special prosecutor to investigate alleged misconduct by the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. Now, the bill says the special prosecutor would need to be independent and have no ties to the current administration. Stevens said the bill was created in response to the fatal ICE shootings in Minneapolis earlier this year and the death of Nenko Gonchev, a detainee at the North Lake Processing Center in Lake County. Stevens wrote this legislation after she says she was stonewalled by acting ICE Director Todd Lyons and former Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. The U.S. representative has previously called for an investigation into the death of Gonchev 2 separate times. She said she never received a response.
We asked about the death of Mr. Gonchev when we were at Baldwin. We were informed that a death investigation was still going on. A month and a half later, we still haven't gotten answers. And so, look, we need a special prosecutor.
Stevens has partnered with Representative Hillary Scholten during her congressional visits to the North Lake Processing Center. And if this bill is passed, it would eliminate qualified immunity for any DHS officer or employee indicted by a special prosecutor. In studio, I'm Aaron Sullivan, 13 on Your Side.
Your voice, your vote, and a familiar face for West Michigan. Ottawa County Board Chairman Joe Moss is setting his sights on Lansing. The conservative Republican officially announced his run for Michigan's 89th House District on Wednesday. Moss, who co-founded the group Ottawa Impact, says his platform will focus on protecting families, reducing taxes, and eliminating waste in government. His time on the county board has been marked by both praise from supporters for moves including closing the DEI office, as well as controversy and criticism over high-profile, costly litigation. Moss is looking to succeed Republican Representative Luke Meerman. And the focus on West Michigan in the race for governor continued last week as a high-profile Republican candidate made a stop to the region on Wednesday. You may have seen ads for Perry Johnson on TV as the conservative millionaire has funded a recent advertising blitz. Johnson ran for governor in 2022, but due to fraudulent petition signatures collected by a third-party company, He and 5 other gubernatorial candidates were not eligible for the ballot. Johnson told 13 on Your Side at the campaign stop this week that he would have been governor now if he was allowed on the ballot last election. He added that this election, his message to voters is very similar to last time.
I have a very simple message. Let us trim the fat out of the government and let the people keep their money. Now, we need to eliminate the state income tax. We have to reform the property tax. And I don't think there's any person alive that doesn't think it's a sin if you've already had your home paid off that you still have to pay this property tax every year.
Johnson is one of about half a dozen candidates vying for the Republican Party's nomination for governor in the August primary. And big news along the Grand Rapids riverfront. The restoration of the Grand River has gotten the last approvals needed to begin the project. 13 on Your Side's Lauren Baker has more on the federal funding approved to make major changes.
The water of the Grand River will soon flow on a new path down the banks of downtown Grand Rapids.
The river can be kind of this gathering place for the community now. And again, bringing the namesake rapids back.
The city of Grand Rapids and Grand Rapids Whitewater announced the approval of $11 million for the Lower Grand River Habitat Restoration Project, also known as the Grand River Revitalization. A monumental move, Matt Chapman with Grand Rapids Whitewater says has been years in the making.
When this project first launched back in 2009, there was a lot of excitement about this idea of revitalizing the river corridor. Back in 2022, we had a setback where we actually had to withdraw the project application, redesign the project. We really shifted from that recreational focus now. Again, we'll be installing a lot more of these kind of rock and natural boulder structures. Unfortunately, those whitewater recreational elements have been removed, but we'll still have rapids.
The first step of the Grand River restoration actually starts in this stretch of the river. It starts near I-196 and actually makes its way all the way down to Fulton Street. Now, in this area, crews will be removing dams and adding natural rocks to do things like improve the river flow, the natural habitat in this area, and of course, public access. The dams that will be removed are part of the historical makeup of Grand Rapids.
As early as the 1860s, we started to build dams because as they were floating the logs downstream for the furniture factories, the logs would actually get jammed up in the rapids and kind of the shallower water. So they built a few different iterations of the dams, essentially to try to raise the water, drown them out.
And now a new chapter begins, allowing people to do things like kayak, fish, and simply enjoy the nature of the river.
Giving people a chance in the urban city to go down and embrace and connect with nature.
The project will start July 1st in Anabawin Park, meaning the park will be closed during the project. It's expected to last for 2 years, and in total, the project will cost roughly $22 million. A key state rate-keeping panel has approved a new rate hike for a major Michigan utility, amidst recent controversy over the panel's actions and how it operates. Coming up, more on that rate increase and what the Michigan Public Service Commission says it will go to. The Michigan Public Service Commission has approved the newest rate hike for consumers' energy, estimated at a total upward of $200 million. That decision came during a Friday meeting of the commission where petitions to rehear and reopen a high-profile case involving a new data center set for Saline Township were also denied. The commission saying the rate increase would be to, quote, support the utility's continued improvements in making its power grid more reliable. Concerns surrounding utility rates and data centers have led to calls to reform the commission, including expanding potentially the number of members and how they are chosen. There are more than 20 active racetracks across the state of Michigan, and lawmakers in Lansing are working on bills to make sure they can continue to operate. 13 on Your Side's Micah Cho went to Berlin Raceway this week, and he has more on the legislation and how rural racetracks could benefit the most.
The legislation moving both through the State House and the Senate would essentially protect racetracks like Berlin Raceway from being forced out due to nuisance claims from surrounding developments. The sound of a car driving high high speeds around the track is almost a staple of Berlin Raceway.
No doubt there's some noise associated with what we're doing out here.
But that sound, according to Berlin's Andrew Postma, can be a source of controversy for some.
Just like anything, right? There's always, a lot of people that support you and maybe a few that don't, and sometimes they can be kind of loud.
Two bills, HB 5652 and SB 0773, or called Right to Race, would give the over 20 racetracks in Michigan protection against nuisance claims from developments that move near them.
Ottawa County is growing quick, just here close to home, growing very quickly. And so to have that element of, hey, you've been here, you're established, you're a community asset, certainly something that we're watching closely and we're optimistic on.
Every year, Berlin hosts over 20 races throughout the spring and summer, bringing people from across West Michigan to the small rural community and customers into local businesses. And they're looking forward to putting on plenty more in the years to come.
Several thousand people out here every week joining us for our races. We have over 100 race day employees, people that are working on race days. So we really do just take pride in being here, a staple in the community, and providing what we can for race fans.
In Marne, Micah Cho, 13 on your side.
The finances of one West Michigan township are in the spotlight after audits over several years were not submitted on time. After the break, how that could impact the area and what could happen next. Gun violence and car thefts are down over the last year. That's according to Grand Rapids Mayor David LeGrand, who highlighted improvements while also acknowledging the challenges in keeping up with all the growth. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson was at the State of the City address Wednesday night and has details on the city's commitment to empowering its residents as the city marks 175 years since its founding.
For a city to rise and to keep on rising, two things have to be true. We have to progress into the future, and we have to protect what works.
Grand Rapids Mayor David LeGrand focused on a growing Grand Rapids in his second State of the City address. With major economic development projects like the Amway Soccer Stadium and the Acrisure Amphitheater set to begin business, LeGrand says this provides more opportunities for the city to grow.
Maybe the best thing that I would say about the amphitheater and the soccer stadium is that they'll invite more people to visit our city, to find out what a great place it is, and maybe join us in living here.
City commissioners we spoke with shared LeGrand's hopes for the future of Grand Rapids.
I think it was reflective, it was exciting, and I think it was motivating for all of us, our colleagues, to say, what else do we have to do?
We all are proud that we are the #1 LinkedIn city for the entire nation. And with all the new venues opening and the new economic development that could come because of that.
LeGrand also emphasized what he calls the city's progress in public safety, including an 18% reduction in shootings and 27% decrease in auto thefts.
We've reintroduced community police officers. These are folks who are going to be building relationships and trust in neighborhoods person by person. Because ultimately trust is not built in a moment in an encounter. Trust is built over time, face to face.
Interim Police Chief Joe Trigg agrees with that sentiment and adds the department needs more officers to keep up.
Grand Rapids is a destination, so we just want to make sure that we have the men and women that can provide a good service.
LeGrand noted that although Grand Rapids is growing, it's also essential to stay closely connected as a community.
When we plan, act, and build, let's make sure we ask ourselves, will this include everyone? Let's renew our commitments to independence and also celebrate and reinforce our interdependence. Thank you all.
Grand Rapids and Kent County officials are looking to reduce gun violence in the city during the summer. The Safe Alliances for Everyone is a community-wide task force that holds events throughout the year to address how to bring gun violence down. At their annual community meeting this past week, they discussed this year's grant recipients for anti-violence initiatives. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson has that story.
City Commissioner Melinda Yasasi has been with the SAFE Task Force since the beginning and emphasized the importance of community-driven efforts highlighted at the gathering.
Is for our winners to come together, to connect with different departments in the city,
to say what are the things that we're planning or doing. Today we're talking about some longer term strategies as well.
One of those grant recipients is Duke Turley Jr., beginning an initiative called Let's Talk King. Its goal is to combat gun violence by supporting the mental health of young men.
It's healthy to have a space or someone to talk to about what you're dealing with internally.
Yasasi also spoke about a gun violence memorial. The idea came after a proposal was rejected by the city to rename a street in honor of Amelia Penn. The teenager was shot and killed in June of 2024. Yasasi says it's important to remember all victims of gun violence in Grand Rapids.
What we could collectively do as a city to remember those that have lost their lives, particularly these young people as well, but anyone impacted by gun violence in our city.
Now to the finances of Fruitport Township. The issue, audits over the past 3 years were not submitted to the state on time, affecting the funding the township receives from the state. 13 on Your Side's Nick Nelson was at the board meeting where the township treasurer of 30 years claimed she was recently told to resign because of the delays.
It was a tense meeting in Fruitport Township Monday night. The meeting centered on the financial status of the township and recent financial audits. Many in attendance defended the current treasurer.
I went home upset about it, sick for a week, because he said more than once these three things. You should resign, we're going to have a forensic audit, we're going to appoint a new treasurer.
That's Fruitport Township Treasurer Rose Dillon asserting at the township's board meeting Monday that following discussions about financial audits that had not been completed, Township Trustee David Henry suggested she resign.
And I was working with Rose for a while trying to get caught up, and it was just time we had a chat and say, we got to fix this. And there was a discussion with us, and I think the outcome of that got misinterpreted.
Todd Dunham is the township supervisor. He says these audits have caught up with the finances of the township, saying the township isn't able to access state funding for crucial development projects.
I got a couple other developments going on in there, and I got another development waiting to see when we can start bonding again. So it's all the infrastructure and everything else that goes in the ground and the sidewalks, and I think it just costs a lot of money.
However, many in the community leaped to Dillon's defense, including the Muskegon County Treasurer.
I never had a single problem with Rosie. She's been an excellent treasurer as far as I'm concerned.
The Township Board is set to pass its budget for the next fiscal year. In Fruitport Township, Nick Nelson, 13 on Your Side.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed multiple pieces of legislation into law this week, including for the designation of a state duck. Which waterfowl earned the high honor? That's next. We have a better idea of what a Microsoft data center would be like in West Michigan after seeing one already in operation in Milwaukee. The tech company owns land in Gaines Charter Township, where a planning commission meeting was held on Thursday. One of the concerns brought up again was noise. 13 on Your Side's Nick Nelson has the latest from that meeting.
This decision will have long-term consequences for the people who live here, raise families here. I'm getting emotional. And have their largest financial investments in their homes. We deserve full understanding of the impacts before irreversible decisions are made.
Taylor Ryder is voicing her concern to Gaines Township's Planning Commission about the proposed Microsoft data center, which would be about 600 feet from her home. A new report from the Milwaukee ABC affiliate shows a consistent buzzing noise in a neighborhood coming from an adjacent Microsoft data center there. We showed Ryder that footage.
Just the thought of not even being able to enjoy your backyard, and I've heard a lot of people say even in the house with the door shut and the window shut, they can still hear this noise. So it's very concerning.
We also asked Gaines Township Community Development Director Dan Wells about the noise issue after Thursday night's meeting. He says the township is working with the tech giant to keep noise levels down.
We're going to look at potentially limiting the decibel levels at the property line, which our zoning ordinance doesn't currently do. We just don't have it in our regulations. So we're going to apply those regulations kind of in a special case to this project.
Tony Maurer was in attendance to let people know about current state legislation that would pause data center approvals.
This really isn't a partisan political issue, but what it does is it puts a pause on these data centers from going up, from being approved until April 1st, 2027.
The state of Michigan has an official duck, thanks to legislation recently signed by Governor Whitmer. House Bill 4044 named the wood duck as Michigan's official duck. The governor's office says the wood duck nearly went extinct in the early 1900s, but through conservation efforts, the wood duck now has a population of about 100,000 in Michigan alone. The legislation, originally introduced in January of last year, passed both the House and Senate with wide bipartisan support. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com.